Imagine with me, if you will, trying to go into business in a small town. The whole process of everything it takes to get started in a traditional business, in a storefront, maybe in the downtown. You're going to need to decide what kind of business you want to run. You're going to need to complete a business plan. You're going to need to work out all the details in advance. You need to take the 7-week business training class, right? You need to figure out, you need to be really great at management. You need to be a marketing guru. You need to have terrific credit. You got to have great connections in the community. You need to have just solid resources and assets within of your own, as well as others that you can leverage. You need a lot. So going into business, it's a big jump, right? That's a big, big jump. So imagine with me, if you will, what if we made some small steps to doing that? What if we built the small steps that made that whole process easier? What if before enrolling in Margaret's 7-week business class and finishing our business plan and getting all of the pieces, getting all of our ducks in a row, what if we just started with a booth at a festival? We wouldn't need much of a plan to get some stuff and rent a table and put out our popcorn and see if anybody was going to buy it. And learn to deal with the public. Find out which flavors sold well. Find out whether people even want to buy popcorn in our community. We could find out, we could build up some assets, build up a little money in reserve, and then we could take a bigger step. We could go from that booth. Maybe we could have a pop-up store for a few weeks, maybe. And then then we could maybe take that 7-week business class, and we would know so much more. We'd have better questions. When we did a business plan, we would be so much smarter about what we were doing. We didn't need to have all our ducks in a row to get started. Maybe if we could just find one of our ducks, we could just start with the duck we've got instead of trying to get everything worked out in advance. And that is the concept of the innovative rural business models that we're going to talk about. The idea that we can spread economic opportunity to a lot more people than can access it otherwise. If you have to have all your ducks in a row, then only our very best organized, best asseted people can participate. But if we can change that where lots more people can participate, we're going to spread economic opportunity. Plus, what we're going to do is we're going to reach a lot more opportunities within our own community that will be filled by our own local entrepreneurs. We'll build more life and activity in our community. The secret for those of us in this room, whether we're in business or we're in the business of helping businesses, is that it's not that this is something new we have to add. This is something that we can put together with the things that we're already doing. It's a new mindset that lets us leverage what we're already doing and generate a lot more results. So these are the innovative rural business models. They are part of the platform, the method called Idea Friendly. This is a method I came up with based on some research out of Iowa State University. They followed 99 communities over a 20-year time period. 99 communities over 20 years. You can imagine lots of different things happened over those 20 years. Some factories failed, new businesses went in. Some towns had a boom, other towns had a bust. Some people lost a school, some people gained a lot of new residents. So looking at 99 different communities, they were able to identify some characteristics that were indicated which communities were going to better succeed. And the study's authors said the communities that were most open to new ideas were the ones that had the best economic and demographic outcomes. In other words, they prospered and they kept their people because they were open to new ideas. And this kind of makes sense if you think about it. The communities that are open to new ideas can deal with whatever the world throws at them, whether it's good or bad. But if you're still hanging on to the ideas from way back when, you're kind of smiling, you might know somebody with some of those ideas, then it's harder to adapt. It's really hard to adapt when you're still talking about, well, back before the factory closed, or back when we still had the school, or back in the day. It's hard to adapt to the future if you're not open to new ideas. And that's what the study from Iowa State University found. And so from that, I've developed the Idea Friendly method. It's a way of making your community more open to new ideas, which that's going to be the key. How can we actually make our community be more open? We need to gather a crowd because none of us can do it alone. So we'll need to gather our crowd. Then we're going to need to build some connections. We'll have to actually connect people to each other and connect people to resources if they're going to be able to accomplish anything. And then finally, we're going to take small steps. So instead of that huge jump into business, how can we give people small steps into business or small steps in any project that we're taking on? So that's the idea-friendly method that lies beneath and holds up the innovative rural business models. And here they are. These are the 4 characteristics that help you to recognize an innovative rural business model when you see one happening. They are tiny. These are little bitty businesses so that you don't need so many resources. They're temporary. They don't last very long. It's just we're going to test it out for a few hours at the festival or a couple of days, or maybe we're open for a few weeks during the holidays, or maybe it's just something that's going to be here for a few months and we'll see how it goes. They're businesses done together. So we're going to put businesses inside of other businesses or in places where there's lots of business happening together, because when there's lots of business happening together, then we all generate additional activity in life. We're going to benefit from each other's activity. And finally, traveling businesses. These are great in small towns because we all have the issue of we're a small town, we have a limited amount of market. And so to build up enough market to reach enough that you can run an actual business, sometimes if you could just move from one location to another, if I could be in 3 towns instead of just in 1 town, that would be enough market for me to have a viable business. So traveling businesses. Now, those are the 4 characteristics. We're going to put them together in lots of different ways. They fit together like little puzzle pieces. So as we go through lots of examples here of real businesses actually happening in the real world in small towns all over, we're going to look at how those 4 different pieces maybe fit together in that particular example. And the first one is business inside a business. Now, business inside a business is one of my very favorites because we have existing businesses that have maybe a little extra room. There's a business in Webster City, Iowa that is a bakery. And so you place your order, they're in kind of a traditional long, narrow storefront. Well, the bakery counter, and then they have tables, and then they have some space that really they're just not filling it entirely. And so you place your order and you turn around and there's a little tiny shop called Favorite Things. There's just one wall of shelves with cool decorative stuff you could put in your house, little tiny furniture. And it's a one-wall store. So it's tiny. It probably won't be there forever. It'll change out, so it's probably temporary. It's together because it's inside of another business. So that benefits from the foot traffic from the bakery, of course. If we just had one wall of cute stuff in an empty building, it wouldn't work near as well as it does inside the bakery. And then also there's a book rack from a local author who has put a rack of her books for sale right there in the bakery next to it. And then on the rest of the walls around the bakery, the co-owner of the bakery is a photographer. And so all over the walls are his photos. Well, he didn't have enough photos to fill all the walls, and so other local artists now exhibit on their walls. So it's a bakery, an art gallery, a bookshop, and a little retail store. That's critical mass. That's going to draw a lot of people in the door, and all the businesses benefit from each other, from the shared foot traffic. You know the artists, like if I hang my art in there, I'm going to drag everybody I know. Come down and look, I've hung my art at the bakery. You have to come down here and look. And so that brings additional customers to the bakery and to the book rack and to the cute little store there. So everybody benefits from these businesses that are done together. So you see how those little pieces fit together? Now, could the little tiny cute Favorite Things, cute decorative stuff and furniture place, could they fill a storefront? Not easily, especially if that's their first business ever. That's hard. But can they fill one shelf in the bakery? Just for a while. You bet. And then they're going to gain experience, and then they're going to gain knowledge. That book, the author of the book, can she fill a storefront? Boy, that's a real stretch, but she can put her book rack someplace else and can help provide additional foot traffic for everybody involved. So that's tiny, temporary, and together. Another example of the way that we did this actually in Alva was we had the ladies' night out. That's the shopping event where all the ladies turn out and go shop downtown. I mean, that's the whole point of the event, go shop. They could have called it go shop, but so they call it ladies' night out. And this furniture store actually invited 2 local home-based businesses to come set up in their shop during ladies' night out when they knew there would be extra foot traffic. So On the little table, they have a home-based jewelry seller, has her jewelry spread out on a little coffee table there. And then at a stand-up bar, they had a gal doing skincare consultations at the stand-up bar. So both of those businesses got additional exposure. You know they brought their customers down to see them, and then they shopped for furniture as well as then went around downtown to all the other stores because it was the special event. So you can use this during special events to build up even more life and activity. I do encourage you to look beyond retail. This isn't just retail stores that can do this. This is an insurance kind of place, and you'll notice what they're doing with their front window space. They have their plants overwintering in the front window, which, I mean, the plants have to go somewhere to overwinter. My point is, could we put a business in that space? Could we pop up a business so small that it just filled that front space? I can tell you, I went into my own insurance office to pay my bill or ask a question. I walked in and I walked from the front door to the first desk in the insurance office. And I mean, it was like I was walking and walking and walking. I'm waiting to get to the desk. I know the desk. Here's the first desk in the office. Do you know how many businesses we could pop up in this space right here? Oh my gosh, we could have 3 or 4. So it's an opportunity to look at space that's being underused, because probably like my town, your town has a shortage of buildings that are in good enough shape for somebody to go into them right now. Anybody else have the building shortage issue? I see some unhappy smiles. Yeah, we have that. And this is a way to do more business, give people a chance to build their business experience without expecting them to take on $1 million rehab and bring one of the other buildings up to code. Let them use that unused and underused space in your existing businesses. Art on the walls. This is Goffstown, New Hampshire. They have a program where once a quarter they go into all kinds of different existing businesses in the community and they just hang up local art on the walls. They call it Art on the Walls because they're very creative in Goffstown. Each artist gets additional exposure. They drag all of their folks down there to see them because they're very excited. Both businesses benefit. And in fact, because they do it all over town, every time it's change out day and they put up new art, everybody's excited. A lot of new traffic comes in as people go, what's the new art? We want to see the new art. So, and then each artist benefits because they have a full quarter of exposure to different customers that are going to be there. So it's tiny, temporary, and together. So how would you rate that on a 1 to 10 scale of possibility of doing something like the business inside a business in your community? I just want you to write that down. Think about it. Can you think of a specific business that this would work in your community? All of us have a lot of service businesses in our downtown now. And it's a desk and a telephone and a cell phone and a chair, and that's the business. But they've got a traditional full-size space with not much else going on. Local art could fill their walls. And that's like a first step. It's so easy to convince them, hey, let us hang some art. You'll like it. Look, it's pretty art. You want to have it. You can convince them of that, and then you can come back after another quarter or after that program's been successful for a year. You can come back and go, hey, we're starting a tiny business program. You know, we would like to use your front windows as a display for another business. If you had a good time with the art, then you're more likely to say yes. And then after you say yes, and that's worked for a year, then we can come to you and say, hey, we're going to pop up another business inside your space. And you've said yes all along, so of course you're going to say yes again. See, she's nodding. She's going to go for it. She's easy to convince. So that's art on the walls. And one great example of business inside a business that I know you have in your towns is the beauty salon. This is where I get my hair cut. And so you look around there. All the haircutters except the salon owner, independent business owners. The massage therapist that's working from the side room, independent business. The nail salon techs, also working out of there, also independent business owners. Have you been counting them in your independent business owner count? Ooh, maybe we should count them. And what about that jewelry that's sitting on the counter? Who made that? That's another business. The lady that made the scarves that are there? And then there's a school fundraiser on the counter too. But I went in the other day and there's headbands on the counter now. I said, who made the headbands? It's a local high school senior who had just graduated this year. Do you know, this is the original 1 square foot business. She has 1 square foot of counter space at the salon. She's in business. She is learning what sells. She's learning to manage her materials, her inventory and supply. She's finding out what people like. She's having to learn to deal with other businesses, to work with the salon owner. She's having to manage her money. So, man, she's learning some great entrepreneurial skills right here. Did you think to count her in your last business count? Probably not. She may, however, if you support her, she may step up and be one of your major business owners in another 10 years. As she takes small steps, you know, she may be in a booth at the event, and then maybe she's going to get a trailer, and then she's going to be, you know, have half of a building with somebody else, and then she's going to have her own place. She won't be selling headbands then. She's going to be like you. She's going to be the serial entrepreneur. She'll say, well, for right now, I'm selling headbands. Later, I'll be doing something else. These are the kind of opportunities you watch for. These are your budding entrepreneurs. These are the future business leaders in your community. Now, what if she never opens another business? Did you lose anything? No. But what if you encouraged a dozen young people to try their own 1 square foot businesses? How many of them would succeed? 1 or 2? 3 or 4? Enough to make it worthwhile. Delaware, the state of Delaware, did a project they called Project Pop-Up. And they actually worked with local independent businesses that didn't have a location, but they were looking for ones that had done some small steps previously, ones that had built up some customer base, had experienced some sales. And so they carefully selected through a competitive process businesses to go in through the holiday season in buildings that were ready to occupy. Over a 4-year time span, they worked with 18 businesses that went through their program. 18 businesses. 17 of them signed long-term leases. They just needed somebody to boost them up that additional step so that then they were ready to sign a long-term lease. Pretty exciting. Mobile businesses, traveling businesses, trucks and trailers. Everybody loves trucks and trailers. Food trucks, right? We all love to have food trucks because we like to eat. This is the way we are. That one's in Alva, Oklahoma, where I will point out it is illegal to sell from a vehicle on the street. So you will notice she is not on the street. She's actually at the fairgrounds in that picture. She's also been on empty lots, parking lots, on the courthouse parking lot, any place that was not the street, as long as it was not the street. But it doesn't have, now I will say this, there's also been a big discussion in Alva, are food trucks good for us or bad for us? Because they're not local, all of them. Darlene is local, but not all of them are. And so maybe this is bad for our community because they take money out. So I want to point out the example from Altadena, California. This is from Altadena. They have a once a month food truck event, like a food truck Friday kind of thing, on an empty lot. You can see it's a parking lot. They just take it over. And the restaurant owners were up in arms when this was first proposed and said, no, we are flat against it. We will not have this. Well, they went ahead and did it. And after 3 months, the restaurant owners said, you can't stop. It's the best night of the month for us. So it pays to track. It's good to know. Now, why would that be the best night of the month? Because people are eating at the food trucks. Why is it the best night of the month for the restaurants?
Well, variety. People come out because they say, hey, let's see what food trucks are there. And as long as we're out, well, let's go to the restaurant instead.
Right, variety. We're going out. Maybe there's a big crowd here, so let's go ahead and go to the restaurant. Did you ever eat at a food truck and get like this portion, the bitty portion? It was really cute. It tasted really good. Are you still hungry?
Or wait too long.
Or the line's too long, we don't want to wait. And so it's turned out to be the best night of the month for the existing restaurants. Now, I want to say this. Bringing more life and activity to your downtown is good, and everyone will benefit. The more life and activity there is in your community, the more all your businesses benefit. Even if that life and activity starts by being something you bring in from outside. It's a tool to help generate more self-sustaining activity of your own. Okay.
So was this also good for the food trucks?
Oh yeah, because they kept coming. And it's still ongoing. Altadena, California. They're still doing it. They're kind of near a big city, so they actually have, I think they're near Pasadena, and so they have the Pasadena food trucks come up. Which, in our case, in Oklahoma, we would capture local sales tax while they were here, right? So we're going to get that. My local grocery store owner said, you know, these food trucks, they don't buy anything from me. I said, which means I read it in the newspaper, and so I said out loud to my husband, who has nothing, but it occurred to me, perhaps I should say it occurred to me, man, if I was the local grocery store owner, I would go around and talk to those food trucks when they showed up and say, what do you serve? What do you buy? What do you need? What could I provide that you wouldn't then have to bring? Or if you run out of anything, what could I provide for you then? What? Say that again louder. Relationships. You're going to have to build relationships with those businesses, those food trucks that you bring in from out of town, if you want to benefit from them to the highest possible way. Right. Absolutely. But you know, it doesn't have to just be food. I do like to point out Leo and his sharpening service, Caboose. Is this not, it's the cutest thing ever. Leo's sharpening service, he's all over Kansas. I ran into him in Pratt, and then I met his wife when I was in Elkhart. And so he'll sharpen anything with a blade. So he sharpens knives and yard tools and all your equipment that needs to be sharpened. Leo can sharpen it for you. And he goes town to town in Kansas. Are there enough people in Elkhart, Kansas that he could run a business full-time doing sharpening just in Elkhart? No. Can he cover all of southern Kansas and make a retirement business out of it? He does. Leo does it. You bet. So all kinds of services. I know of a financial advisor based out of a trailer and a wedding planner. I would think any one of those service businesses that's in our downtowns that's just a desk and a chair and a cell phone, they could be in a trailer. They could be everywhere. Laser tag. I ran into this in Cosmos, Minnesota. They have a laser tag game going here. Cosmos. Yeah, they have a space festival because they're called Cosmos. So they're less than 1,000 people, and they have a space festival, which was really awesome, by the way. But they were playing laser tag there. You know, the laser tag guys are not just in Cosmos, they are all over. And that is how they build up enough market share to actually have a sustainable business by moving from place to place. Pretty cool. So they have all these inflatable little things that you can hide behind. There's the inflatable stack of tires, the inflatable tank that you can hide behind. They have, I kid you not, an inflatable round hay bale. And I thought, you know, if you do that here, we'll just provide you with a hay bale. Just ask. We can do it. Okay, retail. Now we're down to boutiques. You can absolutely do boutiques. Women's boutiques are extremely popular because we love that you're in a cute little Shasta trailer and it's all cute, and we want to go see what your cute little tiny selection is. And you can go place to place, festival to festival, event to event. You can be all over all the time. And you didn't spend $1 million rehabbing one of those downtown buildings that really needs $1 million to bring it up to speed. So this is a way of doing a smaller step to getting into business without having to jump all the way and do it all at once. Okay, so Amy from Ada says they have a bricks and mortar women's boutique that actually sells there in Ada, but then they have the trailer and they go around all over to events and festivals and any place else there's going to be a crowd, and they set up there and they're able to gather enough market to make that, and you know that helps support the bricks and mortar store as well as drawing additional people. And so now there's people who go, I saw her at the festival somewhere else. She went all the way to Frederick, and then the next time I'm in Ada, I'm going to stop in because I want to see it. So it helps draw people then to the bricks and mortar business. So you can fit this together with your traditional models, but there you can still have that innovation that you can bring. Okay, now we're going to talk about some different models. This is where we can get everybody into one location. This is the together and tiny. It's also temporary, but co-working is a great way for people, anybody that does one of those laptop-based businesses, they could be anywhere. They can be based out of a co-working space. And really, you don't need a lot of amenities. You need tables, you need Wi-Fi, you need power outlets. The cool kids in the back with their power outlets and the laptops will tell you all you need is good Wi-Fi and an outlet, and you can, a table to work from. And you get those businesses together, they benefit because they're sharing resources and sharing the assets of the setup. And so it's easier for them to actually make connections. It's more fun than working at home. It's better than working at the coffee shop, which is not very professional, or down at the library where there's, you can't really be very friendly at the library. At co-working, you can be all kinds of friendly if you feel like it around your business. This one is in Pella, Iowa, which is a community of, I think, 6,000 people. And it was one of the first small town co-working spaces I ran into. They're still there. Still there. And then co-working has blown up. It's in lots of small towns. We did try one of these in Alva, but I ignored the best piece of advice I got, which was that you should build your community first. Find the people who like to work from their laptops, work out of the coffee shop together for a while, build up that community first, and then acquire the space. I violated that rule and it didn't work, so I'm just passing that rule on to you. If you want to try a co-working space, build the community first. There's a whole movement called Jelly Co-working, which is just people get together and they work together because they're used to working from their laptop at their house and they're all alone. So if you just hold those regular events, yeah. And I would think that the service-based businesses that are not using their whole space may be good event hosts for that kind of thing as well. You can do it in an empty building. You could do it anywhere. If the weather's nice, co-working in the park, you could totally do that. It would be great fun. Not this month. Well, actually, August has been really different, so I don't know. Okay, maker spaces. The town of Sonora, California, which is another 5,000 person town, they lost their hospital, which is kind of a big blow for the community. So they tried to figure out, what do we do with this huge hospital building that we now have empty? So they took over one floor to make a co-working, maker space, hacker space, just cool space. And so they call it the Innovation Lab. And they have an electronics lab and a woodworking lab so you can prototype and build your stuff. They have 3D printers. They have really great internet. They set up some co-working. They set up a video space so you can sit and do videos, record videos of instructional videos or whatever else you need to record to use that as part of your business. And they have set up in their co-working space, they have computers with game programming software on there, because game programming, one of the hottest areas in programming that they found had the highest demand there in California. They're in Northern California, but they figure they could sell to their Southern California neighbors. So they've got it all set up where the workers can come together, anybody that's independent, and make use of this space. They can tinker and work on projects, they can build things, they can prototype stuff out. They have prototyping software on their computers as well. And it's turned into a really neat innovation lab, which is what they called it. So it's really a cool program. So I was in Aberdeen, South Dakota. Aberdeen, South Dakota, they have a co-working space that was opening, and they put in a maker space in one room, like it was a one office size thing. But one of the first 3D printing tools they got prints candy. It uses sugar. And they have a kids program. Yeah, I know. That I was like, can we use it now? Like, can we fire this up? And so they have a youth program where they can come in and 3D print their own candy in their own designs. They get to design it in the software. They get it printed out. So like you can print your name in candy and take it home. I mean, how awesome. What a great introduction to the set of skills that, like you said, then feeds your employers of the future, that they need employees that can run SketchUp. They need employees that have these kind of skills, as well as possible business owners. I see the 3D printed candy business. I can see this working, custom logos. You could make this a business thing. This is a business opportunity, people. I'm thinking we got to get a candy printer. We could do this. Okay, so arts maker spaces. I love arts maker spaces. We used to just call these shared studios. I think we should upgrade the name and call it an artist's makerspace instead of just a shared studio. This one is in Sulphur, Oklahoma. This is a project of the Chickasaw Nation. And what they do is they've got actual studio space for the artists. And then in addition, they have a big gallery where they exhibit all of them together. There's a art supply store so that everybody, not only people that are based in the studios, but anyone from in the area can come and buy art supplies at a good price and make it accessible in a way that, in Sulphur, which is a community of a couple of thousand. Who's near Sulphur? They're about 5,600. About 5,600. So, I mean, it's not like there was going to be an art supply store standing on its own. It needs something to be with. And then they have lecture space and a place where people can teach classes. And then this is actually a picture from inside one of the studios where they are teaching a weaving class. How cool is this? And so all of those artists together actually benefit not just from the shared resources, but from exposure to each other. Exposure to each other. Mark Mulligan, who's with the Chickasaw Nation, said that he sees this as being like his experience in college, where he was exposed to all different kinds of artists who worked in different media, and he learned so much. And so he said he sees this being a collaborative co-working space for artists. Pretty cool. So you can do this. You can do this. Okay, so those are shared spaces. Let's talk tiny businesses. when you drove in, did you notice the shed business in the parking lot? Off to this side, over here. Where's my Cleveland people? Right over here. Yeah, Mary's in the back. The library's running a bookstore in the parking lot in a shed. It's awesome. I've been in there. I was browsing. I'm like, ooh, this is good. There's nice books. I'm not kidding. They have a little towel. There's like a hand towel size thing, and it says XXX section, ask to see. Must be over 18. But you know, then the rest of it, there's Westerns and there's kids books, and so there's just, I mean, it's just packed. It's a wonderful little thing. Now, it's just in a shed, but it raises money for their youth reading program in the summer by selling used books. There's also a big box on the porch so people can donate books so they can go right on through. Now, this business that you see here, this is Nacho Business in Aberdeen. I don't name them, okay? I just report them out to you. Nacho Business, which makes great nachos, by the way. I stopped and had nachos at the Nacho Business because I had to, but it's just a little shed in a parking lot. That's all it is, and they're selling nachos. Pretty cool. They actually were, eventually they cut a deal with a local restaurant, and so they bring pulled pork from the barbecue joint down there and sell it quick out through the window. Yeah, it's really smart. It's really smart. Could the Nacho Business be a freestanding restaurant? Could he afford to do the $1 million rehab on the downtown building? No. Can he afford a garden shed in a parking lot? Apparently so. It's a going concern. It's been there over a year. It's really awesome. So tiny businesses have great potential. In Hyannis in Massachusetts, they have artists' shanties. They run them all summer. Shanties, they call them shanties. They're just little sheds. Each of these is under 200 square feet. It's just enough room to display your art. They are so popular, they have to run a competitive program to let people in because they always have more artists who want to participate than they have sheds. Okay, so these are great. You can see they're cute. When somebody said we're going to put up artist shanties, you know, in the town meeting, someone said, artist shanties? You know, this guy in the back of the room, artist shanties, going to look like crap, right? Do they look like crap? No, they're cute. People are competing to get into them. They're obviously working as businesses. So you can make it work. And this is my favorite example. This is the little mall made of garden sheds. It starts as an empty lot. There's a building burned down in the town of Tynesta, Pennsylvania. Population 500 people. Surrounded by national forest. Not a huge place. So when they lost one of their major downtown buildings, it was a big blow. The Economic Development Group ended up with the lot, and they spent 10 years trying to get a developer to build a building. And it didn't work. Every developer told them no. So after 10 years, they said, we're doing it ourselves. Not we're going to build a building, because they couldn't come up with that much money. They came up with enough money to do some dirt work and to put some garden sheds. Now, the same guy was at this city meeting, you know he was, said, garden sheds, it's going to look like crap. So here's what they did. Look at their little sheds. They're cute. It's a little mall of sheds. They're garden sheds. And because they're temporary, they don't fall under the same restrictive building codes as permanent buildings would. So temporary, tiny, together. Now, Nacho Business by itself in a parking lot does a certain amount of trade. The winery that's based outside of town that has one of these little sheds, they do a lot more trade because they have the advantage of all the businesses together. There's a little garden store, has cute things to put in your garden. The Amish baked goods place, I am all about the Amish baked goods. There's a t-shirt shop. There's an ice cream store. You name it, somebody's doing it. There's a maple syrup place. And they come and they go. And originally when they put them in, they said, okay, we'll do it just during the summer because that's when our tourist season is. People are around. We'll do it in summer and close in winter. And so they actually had a revolt by the shed business owners who said, we want to stay. Business is too good. We will be here all year. So several of the businesses are actually open year round. Now, not only did this not look like crap, it was so successful, it's open long enough hours. The art gallery and coffee shop across the street lengthened the hours they're open. They're now open extended hours and have seen a boost in sales. So it has been completely successful there. And not only do they not look like crap, it has spurred building owners across the street to start improving their facades. That's a big win.
Yeah.
That's a big win.
Where
Yes.
is that, Becky?
Tionesta, Pennsylvania. Tionesta. Tionesta. You found it. They're online. It's the Tionesta Market Village.
And did they move these buildings out every year at what, at the beginning?
No, the buildings now
They
sit
just
there.
shut- I mean, before
Yeah.
they got established to where they could do it all the time.
The first year, they've never actually shut in the winter.
Okay.
Like the first year, the businesses were like, no, we're not closing. So they actually leave them there. Their idea was that if the lot sold, they would just take these and find a new lot and they would move, which I think is really smart. However, I wouldn't sell that lot to a developer for love nor money now. I would keep my little market village. And they have inspired untold numbers of imitators all over. In fact, their neighbors at Connellville, which is another town under 1,000 people, said, well, we don't have enough money to do a whole village at once, and so they started with 3. And they put 3 of them in their downtown. And it's a perfect illustration of how people can step up to going into business. One of those 3 is inhabited by a business that's run by 3 women who have never run a business before in their lives. This is their first try. One of them is run by a woman who sells jewelry, and she normally is at events and festivals or borrows space inside of other businesses. And this gave her a chance to have her own full-time, all-the-time business where she could have her own store. But it was on a scale that she could do. So you can see we're giving people the chance to take steps up. Instead of expecting them to have all their ducks in a row, just like bring your ducks. Yes?
So, okay, help me frame this up in my mind. The city owns the property.
In this case, the Industrial Development Authority, Economic Development
Okay, economic
Authority,
development.
yes.
And then the buildings are placed there by the economic development.
They actually received a grant through USDA to do their funding. They got $40,000 total, managed to do the dirt work, buy the sheds, get electrical service, paint them up, put the little fronts on them, and go. This is like so if the flea market is down market down here, like this is the up market version of the flea market made with sheds. Yeah, same business model. Same business model.
Economic Development Committee rents out the sheds to the.
To individual businesses. The model that they're using in Tionesta, then after they got their grant, they put them all up. They started their waiting list. They still have a waiting list. It's $500 to get started so that we know that you're going to be serious. Since we have a waiting list, we can do that. And then monthly rent is $50 to $70 a month, and you have your own electrical service, which I'm thinking, we have our utilities around here are pretty easy to deal with. We would be able to get the hookups. Like we could work with our utilities. Will there be sheds in your future? Are there sheds in your future?
Like a common bathroom area or something, I just kind of wanted to.
Okay, so where is the public restroom? I don't know the answer to that question. I'm going there this fall though, so I'll find out. I will ask that question. Now, I will say across the street is a coffee shop and an art gallery. So this is actually in downtown, so there's that opportunity. If I was the Economic Development Authority Industrial Development Group there for Forest County, I might put in a shed that had some bathrooms, like you can do that. That's not entirely undoable. Next to this is the farmer's market. Even further, I mean, it's just brilliant. The whole thing is brilliant. So it's next to downtown. It just checks all the boxes. Okay, so I told you Connellville got inspired by them. The Cozy Cabin Christmas. This is, let's see if we can get a picture you can see here. This was 2 high school students heard this story when we told it in South Dakota. We told it at the Rural X conference. And Dylan and Camden saw this and said, we can do this in Miller, South Dakota, little town of Miller. There's a guy who sells storage sheds, all spread out on a lot. You know what that is? That's an opportunity waiting to happen right there. So they convinced the guy and said, let us put businesses in those sheds just for the Christmas festival. Because you already have them, they're already sitting here, can we just put them in there? And so people brought their own tables, their own little space heaters, ran extension cords, because it was Christmas in South Dakota, it was cold. So they had baked goods. There was an Asian fusion cuisine place out of one of these sheds. That's ambitious, people. And then there was a photo booth. So the little kids are holding signs that say naughty and nice. And so we did the photo booth. And then just the fact, I mean, the guy that sells the sheds is so smart that you'll notice he's made himself a fire ring with the name Premier Buildings. That's because he sells the Premier Building. Smart guy doing a little marketing there. This was successful enough that they said, okay, it was super cold. We want to do this again, but it was too cold. I was like, you're in South Dakota. You knew it was cold. People weren't surprised. They wore their coats. It was all good. So they did it again. They did it in July. They had a follow-up event. They called it Christmas in July because they had already convinced people that it was going to happen. So you can still do it. Pascagoula, Mississippi received some tiny houses. They were called Katrina cottages. They were part of the temporary housing after Hurricane Katrina. They went through government hands, through the Emergency Management Agency, and they end up in Pascagoula on what they called the big dirty lot down by the tracks. Do you have a big dirty lot somewhere in town that we could like maybe dress up with some tiny house businesses? So they have this whole row now of little tiny houses, and they're actually spread out in a U around a big central green space, which is going to be important. We're going to do something with that big central green space in a second. So there's a cupcake maker, there's a hair salon, there's a nail salon, there's a photographer, there's a women's clothing business. I mean, just everything that you can think of that would fit in a tiny space, they're doing it in these little tiny houses. And they come and go because it's temporary. But because they're all there together, they build market share with each other. And they're so smart. They realize that the way they find people to rent the tiny house businesses is by giving them smaller steps yet that they could take first. And so that big green space in the center, they hold regular festivals where you can set up your tent-based business, your booth, right there on the lawn, because as people learn and grow from renting booths, then they're in a position to rent one of the houses. So they help people step up. And this is, you can do the same thing in an empty building. Have one of those 15,000 square foot small town department stores downtown that nobody can fill. This is what they did in Washington, Iowa. They took that thing and they divided it into little bitty businesses. They built a village inside the building so that people could just fill a few hundred square feet. They have some that are 300, some that are 500, so they have various little sizes there. And you can go in and start a little business in just a few hundred square feet. So, I mean, you know, it's smaller even than just this area right here. It's different from, okay, so she's asking, is this different from an antique mall where there's all the booths? The business model can be exactly the same. This one in particular, they have one checkout counter, and when you sign your space, when you sign your agreement to rent for, and you can actually rent for month to month, but however many square feet you have determines how many hours you work the counter. So if you have the little bitty 100 square foot space, you work so many hours. If you've got the 500 square foot space, you work so many hours. And that way there's somebody always to man the central place where you can check out. That way not everybody has to be there at all times. Now, I've seen other people do it where you do have to be there all the time. And it just, but you know, just figure out test it, try it, figure out what works in your community. Do it any way that works for you. You know, the shed businesses, you can lock the doors. These little spaces are actually built like little buildings, so they could actually lock the doors as well. So that would be a different option. And then if you're not able to actually fill one of the little store spaces, if that's too much for you, like she needs some small steps to lead people up. She doesn't have a big green space, but she has the central area where she's got push carts set out that are just like, it's maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 square feet of just shelf space that you can fill. If you could fill a few shelves, then you can be a business. And in fact, there's little tables also out in the central area. So if you could just fill one table, you could start a business in the village in Washington, Iowa. It needs to be attractive and the kind of place you'd like to go. And the three examples we just looked at, Ty and Nesta and their sheds, those are cute, they're well maintained. The tiny buildings, the tiny houses in Pascagoula, those are cute, well painted, well maintained. Every year they go out and do maintenance on them. And then the village here, the very first manager of the village was Kathy Lloyd in Washington, Iowa, and she is the one who, she told me she was very selective about what went in there. She didn't want stuff that was available everywhere. She wanted as much emphasis on local, handmade, unique, different, that no one else could be carrying, so that it wasn't just the same stuff you could buy anywhere or the same as the other stores that are already downtown. And so your strong manager can help make that be the kind of thriving business you want it to be. So that's, yes, the secret to success is how well managed it is, and that's true of... I do want to say this about shared spaces. This is from the shops at Modiv in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They divided up a building and did lots of little bitty shops inside of it, but they took the entryway that they couldn't figure out how to make a store right there, and they gave it over to local artists. And this is Rose Ellis working on a huge canvas. She has one wall of an entryway. She was interviewed by the local paper to ask her how well it was working for her, and she said, "You could not get me out of here with a crowbar. It is the best business plan I never thought of. It has turned my life around."
So what does she do?
She's an artist. She paints.
She's painting there.
And she is actually painting there. They gave her enough floor space that she turned it into the world's smallest studio. She has enough space to set up her, and she paints some big stuff apparently, but it's being able to offer her art in a situation where she said before this she was in a giant studio attic type space. What's the right word for the big open studio type apartment? Loft. She was in a big loft space, which was her on her own. And so how many people came to see her at the loft? Not nearly enough, but she got one wall in the shared building. Now there's people in and out of there because there's 10 other little stores, another artist on the other wall in the entryway. So that's 2 artists, 10 little stores, and it's downtown. Now there's enough foot traffic that she can actually make it as an artist. It has turned her life around.
What was the name of the store?
Shops at, the at sign, Modiv, M-O-D-I-V, which is a reference to the street name. And it's in Grand Rapids. And her name is Rose Ellis. But Rose is painting, and I think her point is valid. When we give people those tiny steps they can take, we're turning their lives around. We're giving them the opportunity to, instead of asking them to do the business plan, the 7-week course, the financing, everything all at once in the beginning. And just, you got to do all of this. When we give them the tiny steps and say, just for the weekend, just for a few days, just one wall, we are spreading that opportunity to so many more people who didn't have access to it before. We're making it possible for them to do things that economically they could not have done. We are building the entrepreneur base for our communities, and we're changing the future prosperity of our towns. So I have a true or false question for you. The nature of our work and our jobs has changed significantly over the last 30 years. True or false? All right. Now, this is just kind of a think about it question. If the nature of our work and jobs has changed significantly over the last 30 years, how much has the nature of our attempts to create jobs changed? See, I didn't say you had to say it out loud. I was just saying sometimes we know that's why we're here. Exactly, that's why we're here. So let's talk about a real-world example of how our jobs creation can change, how we can do things a little differently. I met Jessica when I was in Idaho, and she said, I really want a microbrewery in my community. I really want a microbrewery. So her plan so far has been to go up to everybody she meets and says, do you brew beer? Have you thought about starting a microbrewery? You should start a microbrewery. Don't you brew beer? You don't brew beer. Do you brew beer? I mean, this is her plan so far. It hasn't worked terribly well for her yet, but I admire the fact that she knows what she wants for her community. But let's think about, so what would be like the old way to get a microbrewery? Like what would be the old style way of doing it? We would have, our Economic Development Committee should become convinced we should have a microbrewery because we went up to them and said, we really need a microbrewery. So they commissioned a study, right? There was a feasibility study done. And if it was positive enough, then what did we do? We added it to the strategic plan for next year, or maybe the 5-year plan, right? So now it's in the plan, but that's for next year. Then we're going to assign it to a committee. There's 5 people on the committee. They have 17 assignments. One of them is the microbrewery, right? This is the old way. Then maybe they would try some incentives, and they might try to lure somebody that has a big microbrewery somewhere else to start a branch, maybe. Or if we're really good, maybe we can poach somebody's microbrewery. We can lure them away and get them to come to our town and be based here, right? So that's kind of the old style 30 years ago way to get a brewery, if breweries were a deal 30 years ago. So the new way, what could Jessica actually do that would kind of be a new way of doing it? You're just like, it could be anything. Well, so let's just start a homebrew group. Let's just start getting together the people who like to brew beer at home and have them all get together once a month or once every 6 weeks so they can do a full brewing cycle. They can get together, they can taste, they can talk, they can have a great time. Maybe we can like sneak into those meetings, offer a little support, connect them up with some people that'll help them out with legalities, help them out with some business support. Maybe we can start having some free tasting events for the public because that's not selling, and so we can do that, find out what the rules are about that. And by doing that, guess what's going to happen? We're going to get a microbrewery out of the deal. We're going to end up with a microbrewery. Somebody's going to start one. And like you said, it's going to create a market. We'll have enough people interested in it, they'll be excited, they'll support it, we'll make it happen. So, which way do you suppose is more accessible for more people to be involved? In the old way, how many people could be involved in that? Like the board and the committee and the staff? Yeah. All right. So the new way, we've got a homebrew club. How many people could be involved? There's no limit. Like everybody in town that likes beer can come to the homebrew club. That's quite a few people. I'm not saying anything about your town. I'm just saying that a lot of people like beer. So we could have it could be a lot more of the community could be working on this project together. So instead of delegating that authority and saying only 10 people will be in control of this project and will decide for everyone, they've picked, it's done, it's on their committee, it's very formal, we're going to do it the old way. Now it's like we're going to crowdsource a microbrewery. We're just going to kind of make it happen, crowdsourcing. So that is a completely different approach that lets lots more people be involved in jobs creation instead of just officials and leaders and people with titles. Now it's everybody in town can be involved. Whole shift in thinking, complete shift in thinking. Now I do want to say specifically that when I said that we should start having gatherings in a club, I do not mean that there should be a president and a treasurer's report and who's going to read the minutes, and then we have follow-up and accountability, like we need to check, did you do the thing? Like, you didn't brew any beer this month? Oh my gosh, all right, you're out. You're just, you're off the committee. No, I'm saying get some friends together, let them have some beer, make it fun and interesting, and that's the new way, informal, lots of people, a crowd, distributed, chaotic. It's not really that organized. It's very chaotic, and that's a good thing because that is where the results come from today. Now, this goes back to the idea-friendly method. We're making our towns more open to new ideas. We talked about that take small steps part. Now we're talking about the building connections. How can we build connections between people, and how can we build connections from people to resources? Lots of you are resource people. How can we help that building of connections happen so that we can take our crowd and turn it into something far more capable? Open networks do lead to more innovation. Brian Utze from Northwestern University, not Northwestern Oklahoma State University, that other Northwestern University, says that open networks with more connections to different people who are not like us, generate more innovation than closed networks where it's just people who already are kind of know each other and they're already kind of alike. Now think about that formal process we just talked about. The people, those 10 people that are involved in that formal process of doing the feasibility study and assigning it to a committee and putting it on the plan for next year, those 10 people are pretty much alike. They all have similar incomes, similar type of work. They're not very different from each other. But if we have the homebrew group, that's a diverse group of people. That's going to be all kinds of people. And so they're going to come up with more innovative ideas, Professor Utzi says, because they connect with people that have different ways of thinking, a different background, and will come up with more innovative ideas as we connect across. Now, in small towns, we do a great job of connecting with people who are already just like us, right? We have our little networks that we're really well connected with. We are not that good at connecting with people who are not like us, even though they're in the same town. And so that's an opportunity for us to leverage the fact we have more innovative resources available to us if we'll build connections across different kinds of people. That's where innovation will come from. So we'll do two different types of things. We're going to connect people to people, so they'll come up with those innovative ideas. But we're also going to connect people to resources. Like all the resources in this room, there's a lot of resources for building businesses in this room. And those are the kind of resources we want to connect people to. We'll do it in two ways. The first way is connection events. We want to hold a special time at a special place, and it's going to happen right then for a limited time. We're going to have a lot of connections happen in the short space of time. So connection events. The first of those is to do actual formal networking. Norfolk County, Ontario did a formal networking. They did speed networking for their local people at their economic development conference. And people requested meetings with people they already knew. Now, why would they do that? I hear some whispering, but no confident answers. Out of comfort, that's possible. Any other theories why people were asking to meet some?
Who they know.
Oh, so we might want to find out who they know. So I might set a meeting with you to find out who else is in your network. So Clark Hoskin, who ran this event, asked people, so why did you ask for meetings with people you already know? And they told him it was because they were looking for opportunities to do business. I know you, I see you at the post office. That's maybe not the best time for me to say, hey, I'd like your business. So they actually did this so that they would have a time to talk business and probably to tap networks. And probably because they were comfortable with people they knew. They knew that that was a good lead. So actually scheduling formal networking time for your own people can have benefits. You can do business fairs. I love business fairs. Anytime you can take one space, put up booths, and let existing businesses come and show off what they do. You can do it at the fair. It can be at the county fair. It can be at any place. This one is in an empty building. This one was, Michelle Robles from Ohio told me about it. It's their home-based businesses. Now, why did they do their home-based and rural businesses in a business fair? Because the president of their board was buying hydraulic hose, and he had to drive 17 miles to get somebody to do custom hose for him for his equipment. And then he found out that 2 miles outside of town was a guy in a barn making custom hydraulic hose for less than he was paying 17 miles away. He said, all right, that's it. We need to have an event where we get all of those hidden businesses out. And so all their rural businesses, all their home-based businesses in an empty building downtown. And so people started talking to each other. This is that local start networking with each other. It's a good time to ask about people doing business. 2 new businesses formed as a result of this event with people talking to each other. Is that jobs creation? You bet. You bet it is. Colville, Washington does one of these for all their high-tech businesses. If you can lay any claim to being high-tech, you're invited to the Tech Business Fair. And you know business happens because people go, oh, I didn't know you do websites. Let me bring you my website stuff. Oh, I didn't realize you were doing graphic design. I've got some stuff that needs to be done. Those connections that happen when people talk to each other at these events generates more business that will happen in your community that was previously being sent out. So those fairs allow you to capture some of that. You can do back room tours. I love a good back room tour. Do you like to go poke around in the back rooms of businesses and see what kind of cool stuff they've got going on? In Brownsville, Texas, they do one called Shop Hopping around Brownsville, and it's only for business owners, and they just meet in the back room of one of their businesses once a month, and it gives you a chance to kind of look around. You get to see what all the other businesses have. And so you're going to see that they can give referrals. I didn't know you carried that. I'm going to send people to get handmade soaps at your shop because I didn't know you had those. But it also means they can ask questions. Oh, I see you're doing this way. How are you managing your inventory? How are you dealing with employee turnover? It gives them a chance to network and talk to each other. So they're going to build better connections. That's how they get their questions answered, is when those business owners get a chance to run into each other. This was actually a winery and lavender farm in Ontario that I got a chance to tour, and found out that the way you clean lavender buds is with a seed wheat cleaner. I was the only person there who knew what a seed wheat cleaner looked like, and they, all these Canadians, they had no wheat in that area, so they didn't know what it was. It was an exotic piece of equipment to them. But you know what? All those people that were on that tour got a chance to see how they did business differently and what was available. They didn't know it was an event center and a winery and lavender farm. And so it helps people to better build connections when they can go poke around in the back rooms, ask questions, and talk to each other. You can actually hold a single event where you bring a lot of resource people together. I know lots of people do these. So let's talk about two different styles. Webster City, Iowa, they do Entrebash, where they get a lot of the support providers together, and then they have speakers, so it's kind of an event where there's speakers and then there's booths, and you can go around and connect with those resources. And then Cassandra Boniface in the township of Stirling Rawdon in Ontario told me they do one that's informal. There are no speakers. And instead of like formal tables and hard chairs, they have like cushy sofas and like soft chairs. And you can go and sit down and talk to somebody in this informal, comfortable setting. Now, this reaches a whole different group of business owners who would not come and sit and listen to the 1-hour talks from people going on, but they would come out and sit down next to you and be able to hold a conversation that way. So that's actually building connections in a way that's actually targets a whole different group of people. So that's another example. You can hold regular trainings. Tony Guidros from the town of San Saba, Texas, told me that when he first started with economic development there, and he kept running into people in town who said, "Oh, I want to start a business. I'm so excited you're there." He said, "Okay, well, we're going to have the Small Business Development Center come in and do a training. I'll let you know the date." He had 22 people come to the first training. Now, the Small Business Development Center was so excited by having 22 people in a town of less than 5,000 people. Actually, there are 2,700 people. They had 22 people show up for the first training. So they started coming every 2 weeks. In 3 years, they formed 13 new businesses in that town based on those courses. 88 new jobs in a town of 2,700 because they provided that regular support. Now, what made it work is that Tony went around and talked to everybody in town and said, "Have you been thinking of starting a business?" And if you say yes, he goes, "Well, the SBDC is going to be here on Thursday. Are you coming down?" And that's what made it work, is making that connection so that people will actually turn out. And then providing that training in a regular way so that he could always say, no more than 2 weeks away is the next training. People could come down and get their questions answered and connect with the support they needed. You can also do crafternoons. I love crafternoons. This is building connections, and you may not think, okay, crafternoons, how could this possibly be something that would generate businesses? If you get crafty, tinkery, makery people and you put them in a room and you let them all craft together for the afternoon, is somebody going to step up to the level of that 1 square foot business? See, if you tie that together with lots of tiny opportunities, then just getting people together where they can practice their craft together generates new business opportunities, as long as you're making those tiny opportunities available. But you've got to have tiny opportunities available. Now, places. Those were all connection events, so let's talk about places where people can connect. Yes, do you have a question, Lori?
One question. What about the youth? What about, these young people who are still in junior high, high school, even grade school, who want to make headbands and sell them, or
They can come to crafternoons.
right? But I mean,
Young people are welcome at all the kind of.
Reach them?
Is there a way to reach them? There are a number of youth targeting entrepreneurship programs. The one that is already in your community is 4-H. 4-H has an entrepreneurship project. Did you know that? Places. So you can actually build locations or take over locations or borrow locations or be a pirate and just go in and occupy a location for a weekend before anybody notices you're there. So what could you do? Co-working spaces are natural connection points. If you have 4 people running businesses from laptops and they're all in the same place, they're going to talk to each other. Somebody's going to start a new business as an accident just because that kind of thing will happen. And then, the maker spaces are the same way, which is honestly part of the point of the Fab Lab, is to get people to connect with each other around those tools and to realize that they have opportunities to do business together. That's part of what you're looking for. And then we'll talk about commercial kitchens. Big fan of commercial kitchens. You've tried Jan's pickles. God, they're so good. Those came out of Tacoma, Oklahoma. Do you know that story?
Yes.
The school there was closed. This is my neighborhood, man. These are my neighbors. I live like 10 miles from this kitchen incubator. When the school closed, they lost their elementary school, but it had that big, beautiful commercial kitchen certified by the health department 3 ways to Sunday. And so part of what they did is they said, let's make the kitchen available. And so this family started taking that pickle recipe and making pickles. So they would haul in the entire family and do runs of pickles out of this kitchen in Tacoma, Oklahoma. There's maybe 110 people in Tacoma. It's a tiny little joint. And it eventually got big enough that part of what they received as being in that incubator was connections to the Food and Agricultural Products Center that will help you to commercialize your home-cooked and home-grown recipes. So they did that, and then they started working with a custom packer who's in Tulsa, right? So they're getting them custom packed there. So they're not making pickle runs in Tacoma anymore, but is this a success of a local business? You bet, you bet. And I just heard about one of these that's in Driggs, Idaho. And this comes to your question, because the way they started this is they partnered up with the 4-H. The 4-H had a program of teaching kids to grow, care for, harvest, process, and produce their own food for sale. Take them through the whole process. So they took, where did they find a kitchen? They took an empty restaurant. It was not an abandoned restaurant. It was a restaurant that just was not occupied at the moment. So they took over this empty restaurant and used the kitchen. And so you've got young people making bread and all kinds of projects. There's pesto sauce they sell at the farmer's market, and it fits right into the 4-H program that's teaching them all about the whole cycle of creating your own foods, and connects them to the entrepreneurship education as well, because now they're selling. How cool is that? Super cool use of an empty kitchen. Now, if you have a shed business, if you've got the little mall of sheds, do you know that like those business owners are talking to each other? The Amish baked goods and the maple syrup people are going, oh, do you need any maple syrup for your baked goods? Like, do you need some of this for your recipe? People are connecting with each other. People will do this. There's another town, I told you that lots of people had been inspired by Tynesta. Another town that got inspired by them is their neighbor Titusville in Pennsylvania. This is a town of, I want to say 700 people. No, it's bigger than that. I'm going to take it back. I'm looking to see if I have in my notes how big their town is, and I don't. But they took this building and they took one floor of this old empty building. There's a restaurant on the bottom floor, but the other 2 floors were empty. And so they took over one floor to make an incubator or a little business selling space only for arts and crafts related businesses. So everything from alpaca yarn to fine photography, everything that has any kind of arts or crafts connection, then they have the opportunity to rent space in this big, huge space there in Titusville. So when you put that many fabric artists in one space, they're connecting with each other. There will be a lot of collaboration that will happen just because the people connect with each other. And do you suppose the divided retail, the same thing? People that run shops are getting ideas from each other all the time. And these make great opportunities for those of you that are resource providers to drop in, to talk to people, to find out what they need, to see if they could use some training. Ask them about whether they've received any training. What are the issues they're having in their business, and how can you help them to step up to the next step? And that applies in all of these situations. Shared art spaces as well, another great opportunity to go and find people that are connecting with each other, doing that collaborative kind of thing, but also a chance for you to reach out and provide resources to them as well. Now, I will remind you that you build a more powerful network when you build connections. So if we have drawn a crowd, if we did our parts of Idea Friendly, we gathered up a crowd, a whole bunch of people who are all interested in whatever this project is that we're talking about. We built connections between them so that they would be a more capable group of people. So instead of just being a crowd that's just sort of milling around, they're turned into a powerful network. And then we let them take small steps. We provide those opportunities for people to do something tiny. Can you fill 1 square foot? Could you fill a shelf? Could you fill a couple of shelves? Can we give you 1 wall that might turn your life around? So that kind of opportunity, when we tie those 3 pieces together, that's part of the process of making your community more open to new ideas so that it can be more prosperous in the future. I did provide for you, there's a little bonus for you that is 101 ways to encourage more tiny businesses in your community. And this is a list, it's a mix of ideas I've actually seen done in the real world and crazy ideas that I made up just to see if they would work. Because you don't know. It might work, and somebody should test it, and we'll find out. So that whole list, it includes a lot of links to a lot of things. The link to Tianesta is in there because, of course, I put the village of garden shed-based businesses. But there's 101 ways in there. You can download it from there, and you'll also get my newsletter, which is once a week. I give you a positive view of rural because we get enough negative view of rural. There's enough people telling us all the bad news. I tell you good stuff once a week. And a few of you get my newsletter. I know you get my newsletter.
And then Rusty gets it, and he always forwards it to me, even though he knows I already get it. I get it twice. I get it twice.
But-
Did you see what she said this week?
See, and I suspect Rusty sends it to you with like some commentary.
Oh, yeah, he does. He does. I get it twice.
I know Mary gets it as well. So you can ask him whether the newsletter is any good. If you don't like the newsletter, you can unsubscribe really and keep the 101 ways. I really don't care. But I do appreciate everything that you do, the work that you do that makes your community more prosperous, whether you're running your own business or you're helping other people to do businesses. I encourage you to make lots of tiny opportunities available because that person, you never know when that 1 square foot, that 1 wall is going to turn someone's life around. That's the power that you have in your communities. And I just want to thank you for taking time out to be with us today and be part of that. Thank you very much.